Hey everybody and welcome to Amy Nolte Music. Last night I was able to do a podcast with my friends Lloyd Moss, Eric Hemian, and my brother-in-law, Brad Nolte. We talked about 10 Years Gone by Led Zeppelin, and I think the discussion was good, so I want you to hear it. Here we go.
Good evening. I'm Lloyd Moss,
And I'm Eric Hemian.
and welcome to another episode of Why We Love It. Tonight, we're delighted to have back our permanent guest host, Amy Nolte from Amy Nolte Music, and another Nolte, Brad Nolte. So, another diehard Led Zeppelin fan, I assume. So, we're really
Yes.
delighted to have you. So, what I'd like to start off with tonight's song I should talk about is called 10 Years Gone, one of my favorite songs from Led Zeppelin. And I want to ask you guys what your first experience was with listening to Led Zeppelin and what your reaction was when you heard this for the first time or when you heard it again recently this week. Let's have our newest guest go first, Brad Nolte.
Sure. Zeppelin, boy. Well, I think, I just growing up, I think I heard it on the radio first. Usually I got most of my music from my brother, from my older brother, John, because he'd bring home cassette tapes. I think that's how I was introduced to a lot of new wave stuff, the Oingo Boingos and The Cure and that type of thing. But as it relates to classic rock, that was me on my own, listening to the local station here in San Diego, KGB 101.5. It's still a classic rock station. And so back in the late 80s, early 90s, and they still do. They just they played a lot of Zeppelin, and I think I probably heard, Ramble On or something like that, and I just heard that dunk 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 on the bass, and I was just like, wow, it was just cool, and then from there to everything else. And then it was me in the BCG Music Club. I could select like 4 CDs a month, and I just go crazy trying to figure out which one. Kids these days, I don't even know, but you'd have to like really think about what you're going to select, So I got like Led Zeppelin 4 and House is the Holy. So it started on the radio, and then it was me getting albums.
Brad, with that music club, did you do what I did and like canceled each month and got another 10 free?
Something like that, I think. Yeah.
That's how I built my CD
Yeah.
collection, which I later
Yeah.
sold. Yeah.
I think so. There were some nefarious uh, things going on there to figure out the billing. Yeah.
One of my neighbors said that when I told my neighbor who worked in marketing what we were doing, she goes, "Oh yeah, your scripts." I go, "What?" She goes, "Subscribe, cancel, renew." So that's what we
Yeah.
were.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they figure like a certain percentage of us would be nefarious and stuff. Amy, what about you in terms of Led Zeppelin? What was your first experience, and what was your reaction to when you probably reheard the song recently?
I think I was sitting in my high school music room um, at some I don't know why sometimes we just wouldn't do anything in there and people could just put on CDs that they liked and so a friend of mine named Mark Steele put on Stairway to Heaven and I think I was 13 or 14 years old. I'd never heard it before. And since I was sitting at the piano, I just started noodling around trying to figure it out. And those three chords, A minor, G, and F, going back and forth, I remember just like thinking, man, there's just three chords, but this is a jam. And I remember just banging on the piano, like playing those three chords along and kids gathering around and everybody knew the words. I didn't know this song yet, Stairway to Heaven, um, but after that, then that was my introduction. And then I think like Brad, I listened to my classic rock station, which came out of Chico, California, 93.9 KFM, I think. And I'm sure I heard Whole Lot of Love and Black Dog, Over the Hills and Far Away. Like all those songs have been familiar to me over the years. And then 10 Years Gone is one that Brad actually played for me. And I don't think we said it. Brad is my brother-in-law. He's married to I'm married to his brother. And and Brad has always been a huge Led Zeppelin fan. In fact, I remember when he got married, one of his groomsmen, I think, got him a Led Zeppelin box set. And
Wow.
is that right, Brad?
Correct. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's a good memory. I think that was Kevin Peavy was a good friend of mine, and we grew up listening to Zeppelin. And yeah, he got me the box set back in the late '90s. Yeah.
Yeah, so Brad was the first guy I knew that was super into Led Zeppelin, and then over the years he'll try to convert me to them, and he'll send me a song here and there. He'll be like, "I think you'll really like this one," but I do want to say that I'm not like a huge Led Zeppelin head, so that's kind of why I invited Brad today, is because he is, and so I'm going to talk a little less, and he's going to talk a little more. That's my plan.
Your plan might not work because I have a lot of questions to ask you, Amy, because you're our theory whiz here. So you will be talking. I
I can do
guarantee it.
that.
Good,
All
good.
right, I can do that part, but
Eric, what about you? First experience?
Yeah, sure. Led Zeppelin was always there, kind of like God, um, or some Jungian archetype or something that's just always been there since the beginning of history in my younger days. And I don't know if I even specifically had an opinion about them when I was young, but they were always around on the radio, and the older kids playing them on vinyl, on records back in the in the mid 70s when this would have come out. I was 6 7 years old, and you just kind of heard it around. My babysitters would play it. When I got a little bit older, I probably similar to Amy in the sense that I never fell in love with Led Zeppelin, but I definitely got pretty excited about some of the tracks you'd hear on the radio. I thought Stairway to Heaven was really cool. Over the Hills and Far Away was nice and fun. And then things like Kashmir, they just made me feel cool to listen to. It's not that I loved listening to them, but a lot of the other kids were like, "Yeah, man, Kashmir," and just like to talk about it. And so it was that. And then when I got a little bit older and was able to think musically for myself, what I settled on was that I um, had and still have a massive appreciation for Led Zeppelin, um, but I don't subjectively love them the way some people do, and the way I love some other bands. I will have certain moods where I get excited to listen to some Zeppelin, but I'm not you, Lloyd, or Brad,
That's
for that
okay. That's all right.
matter.
We'll welcome you in, Eric,
Thank you. I
occasionally.
appreciate it. Now, as far
Occasionally.
as 10 Years Gone, that's one of those songs that I have heard sporadically over the years. And I always put it in the category of Zeppelin songs that you probably would never hear on the radio. But if you were at a party at somebody's house and it was like pretty late and everybody was drinking and smoking and stuff, and they were, putting on a Zeppelin record, at some point this would come up, and a couple of dudes would be like, "Ah, the song's so cool, man." But I never really tuned into it too specifically as deeply as I did this week when you suggested it. And that's when I really gave it a proper listen and realized what a brilliant song it is, and how I actually like it um, much more than I would have thought. If you just said 10 Years Gone, I'd say, "Oh, okay, cool, whatever." But once I listened to it, wow, I'm kind of blown away.
Okay.
yeah, me too, actually.
So, love all your stories. I'm going to talk about my story with Led Zeppelin. Eric, I might have told you off air, but I want our listeners to know it. I'll try to be quick. When I loved Led Zeppelin, and when I had more hair, I went into this place called Harvey's Place in Long Island where I lived, and the guy tried to make it like the movie Shampoo. It was really funny, like very, energetic, but they were playing Led Zeppelin. Like instead of all the disco music that came out, they played Led Zeppelin one, and this was after I heard like Whole Lot of Love, and it just blew me away. I go, who was that? He goes, that was Led Zeppelin one. So then I had a whole new appreciation for Led Zeppelin because feel the first album is even more consistent than the second. The second was recorded at various studios. The first one was recorded just like in a week or two, everything. But the story I have is that I liked them so much. This was 1977. They had a mail order way to get tickets. It was the only way in Madison Square Garden. So you had to put in a postal money order with a self-addressed stamped envelope, which I did, and I put in $15 because I think the tickets were $7.50 each. So I put in 15, and then I forgot about it. I go, well, I probably I'm not going to get the tickets. Then Sunday night, I remember my mom came into the room, into the what we called the porch, and she was going to throw out. She goes, "I'm just throwing out some stuff, and this is your handwriting." it was my Led Zeppelin tickets with my handwriting with the self-addressed stamped envelope. She almost threw it out.
Oh,
And I was so happy, but I didn't even have a chance to say I was happy because although I love my parents, she said, "Sweetheart, in the future, you don't spend that type of money on tickets. That's a lot of money, you know." But I
well,
got to,
moms are good that way.
oh, yeah. So I got to go, but the first thing I did at the Garden, I got a $2 voucher. Because they only had the $6.50 tickets, the green tickets, the yellow were the better seats, and I had to get a $2 back. So they gave me a $2 voucher that I took to the window. So I had some spending money that night. And then what you could do is you could buy T-shirts. It wasn't cool to buy T-shirts inside Madison Square Garden because they were like $12. The cool thing was to buy bootleg T-shirts with guys with a big gym bag, and you get them for 3. And like anything over 3, you knew you were getting ripped off. Like no one paid more than 3, and that was like the cool thing to do. Yeah,
Love this.
yeah.
But
So
you saw Zeppelin, which is just like
yes, and I'm
that.
so
That's epic, right
right.
there.
But the other thing is that there was a train. There was a 12:10 train back to Long Island, and a 1:40. And my friend was obsessed about not waiting for the 1:40 a.m. train, and we missed a whole lot of love encore. But
Oh,
that's another thing. But I'm still happy I got to see him.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful. I remember when they were doing Kashmir, they had a Jimmy Page was in a laser. He was bathed in a laser light show, and then he broke into Kashmir, which is really cool.
Hmm.
Um, what's interesting about this song for me in terms of the music, and we'll dive deep into the theory because I'm going to bend Amy's ear on that soon, is that unlike, and of course I'm going to play a few guitar riffs, I think. Let's see. Okay. Unlike a song like Heartbreaker, where, it's a heavily accented riff. Or, right? Like a whole lot of love. But when you hear something like 10 Years Gone, and it's an 8-minute song, and I'm only going to play about 5 seconds of it, when he goes, right? It was just so it was so different than what you were used to expecting of Led Zeppelin. Even though they could really go great acoustic, and they did on Led Zeppelin 3, and even on Led Zeppelin 4, there was something about that riff that just calmed me and just made me focus so intently on the song. So I just wanted to talk about that in terms of the musician. Eric? What do you think about in terms of the riff, or what grabbed you first about
Yeah,
the
I
song?
was just going to say that I can relate to what you just said. There's something about that riff that's so it's gentler than you would expect, and yet it's gentle in a way that just draws you in. And it's kind of comforting, but it's also saying, come with me on this journey. Of course, you don't know the first time that it's going to be an 8-minute journey. Um, but, I wanted to ask you, and maybe you or Brad know the answer to this, or maybe not, I don't know, but that first riff is just one guitar by itself. That's the intro to the song. And if you listen in headphones, that's all the way over on the left ear. And what I noticed immediately, and then went back and listened a couple of times, is although it's a kind of an overdriven, distorted guitar sound similar to the one you just played, it has a quality to it that sounds like an acoustic guitar to me. And I was wondering if you know anything about the production of the song, and if it was possible that either A, they used an acoustic guitar and ran it through some distortion and overdrived it. That's not the word, but or B, if they're just using some kind of hollow body guitar or something to give it that quality.
I was watching some Led Zeppelin live video of them doing it, and he definitely wasn't using his Les Paul. He was using a Tele, or maybe the Dan Electro that he used towards the end. So that's a lot thinner in terms of timbre. So maybe
Mhm.
it was that you're picking up. What's interesting also in the live version, John Paul Jones, their bass player, had a 3-neck guitar. One was 12 string. One was, I don't know if it was a mandolin that he used on Battle of Evermore, and I think one might have been an acoustic bass, and that was put in later. So I don't know, but that's a really good question. Brad, do you have any thoughts on it, or
Yeah, I don't know about the production. I've just listened to the Zeppelin version and so many times in my life. And yeah, that first what you played there, Lloyd, was just like it might be something about the name of the song, the lyrics, the sound of that guitar, and I think you were alluding to this, Eric. It just causes you to like think, right? Like to start chunking out your life and reminiscing about like where you've been, where you are, maybe where you're going to go. It really causes me at least to really just think about like how crazy life is and like that 10 years can fly by. Anyway, and I don't know if it's partly that guitar. It's like haunting almost the name of the song, and then you get into the lyrics, and the whole thing just causes you to go, "Whoa!" It just causes you to like examine your life, you know?
I think, Brad, what you're getting at is, and that's what you encapsulated. What happened with me is, I think the emotion of the riff matches the title. I think the emotion of the riff and the title
Yeah,
just make it
yeah,
really haunting.
yeah. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah,
The I mean, yeah, I probably only will talk about theory, but
Please.
usually when you're in a key, and then you go to that minor four chord, usually it doesn't happen right at the beginning of the song. Like usually you've messed around, with different chords or whatever, and you come around to the end, and then it's something like, and it'll hit you right then, and it brings that melancholy, and and it's like some way to make a dramatic exit, but they use it as an entrance.
So, Amy, I have a now I can ask my theory question. I did a little bit of research on that, and please, your job is to tell me if I'm really far off base or like I'm sort of like maybe in somewhat of the right direction. Does it have anything to do with, since we're in the key of A, does it have anything to do with the parallel minor? That some of these chords are part of the parallel minor family at all?
Yeah, I think that it borrows all the time from
Okay.
like you were in A minor.
Okay. Now
Later
that
we'll see
makes
an E
sense.
minor, right? Yeah.
Yeah, now that makes a lot of sense. Okay. Another thing I like about the riff, and Amy and Eric and Brad, are we able to hear that? Like the first time he'll go, well, sorry. And then he goes, so one time he plays one note, one time he plays two notes. My guess is because Jimmy Page could be incredibly sloppy in a cool way, in a visceral way, and my guess is that he didn't plan that. He just that's how he heard it, and that's where I think the spontaneity of the structure makes it even more interesting for me.
Does it ever happen again?
Yeah, all
Yeah.
throughout the song. I mean,
I mean, guitar players are notorious for loving their open strings, right? Like that's an
yeah,
open E first string, right? Yeah.
that's true. That's
Can,
true. So
can
maybe
I
that's
jump
what.
in for a second, Lloyd?
Please,
I saw
please.
an interview with Jimmy Page years ago, and he was talking about how um, after recording Stairway to Heaven, um, they were, for some reason, they were either making a video of it or they were doing, I don't know, they were doing something, but there was going to be a visual element. And so they asked him to mime the solo on camera the way that you would like lip sync a song if you were making a video or something. And he said in the interview, I just laughed. It was the most ridiculous thing because when I'm playing, I'm not thinking about what I'm playing, and there's no way that I could have gone back. It's not like it was a solo that I wrote and practiced. He said that's just not how I play the guitar, and so I think that fits very much with what you said about that being a completely spontaneous choice.
And that's like why he was such a master. I mean, to come up with it's like some guitar. There'll be plenty of famous guitars that come up with one great riff. I mean, Jimmy Page came up with dozens of them that were going to be around 100 years from now, and that's a gift. I think he was a session musician, and he would play on James Bond scores and for Tom Jones. And I think he was just exposed to a lot of music, a lot of different styles that really informed his playing. Anyone else? Or?
I have a question for Amy. since we're kind of talking about the theory and stuff, when you listen to this as a whole song, Amy, I'm curious what your thoughts are about the music theory side of it. Every single chord in this song harmonically works so well for me, but so many of the chord changes or just the changes in harmonic sections are it feels quite random to me as well. And I wanted to know when you kind of analyze it in terms of its harmony, like what's your opinion about how they got what they got and what the relationships are between the different chords and the different harmonic sections as you go part by part through the song. What do you think?
Um, it's like it is part by part, right? There's like sections to this song. It's even hard
Absolutely.
to like it's hard to define the form. And I mean, I was wondering about, and I want to talk about this, like the part where I would say the beat drops might be the bridge. Like I don't know if I call it that, but where it really kicks in, right? Like like that might be the bridge, and I don't know where there's not many songs where that's the case. But yeah, it's just section, 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 and then they it comes back, but I feel like each maybe there's like six different harmonic things that go on. And
And
I mean,
that's what Amy, that's what Jimmy Page was a master at. What you're talking about, he has different sections, but he weaved them together to make a really great song. And it was just not. He did that in a lot of different, a lot of other songs, like "Song Remains the Same," and even "Stairway to Heaven." So it's more it's a little. I'm not going to compare him to Beethoven, but it's a little classical in nature, in that he has different pieces that he was able to make it into a coherent song.
yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say on that topic of when the beat drops, I think Amy said, when the beat drops, and if I didn't really talk about why, so this is a saying a lot as a big Zeppelin fan. This is my favorite Zeppelin song. Okay, so when
Wow.
Amy asked, "Do you want to get on this program?"
Oh,
I was like, "Oh man, let's like," because that's saying a lot, right? And it's at right when he says, and this is I think when the beat drops, he's like, "Changes fill my time, baby, that's all right with me. In the midst, I think of you and how it used to be." And then like it just the song changes. It's almost like, and that's at like 2:20. I don't know how to read music, but I marked it at actually 2:30, 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and it goes for 50 seconds to about 3 minutes and 20 seconds. Okay. And that's a pretty long, if it's a bridge, it's a long bridge. But this is what I want to say about that part. I wish they had just kept going on whatever track they were on right there in that bridge or whatever that is. That is the most beautiful section, as Amy called it, of Zeppelin music that I've heard in their whole compendium. And it's only 50 seconds, and I sit there and go, dang it, couldn't they just do that for like 5 minutes, or maybe I needed to see them live, but I just love that 50 seconds so much.
are you talking about this part when he goes like that part when he's doing the instrumental, or when he sings "Did you ever really need someone"?
No, not that. No, it's before. Did you ever really need someone? It's like I say.
Okay,
It's yeah. It's
yeah.
before that, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like I think it's that section Amy was calling the bridge, where
Mm-hmm.
it's heavy on the guitar. You could also maybe think of it. Someone who's not trained in music like myself, I'd say maybe it's like a guitar solo
Mm-hmm.
by Jimmy there, where he just
Sure.
dives into it. But then they come out of that into a totally different section, which is what you said, Lloyd. Into the "Did you ever really need someone?" It gets more like rhythmic, like da da like that train coming down the line. But before that, that 50 seconds is just very, it's 10 years gone. It's thought provoking. It's like takes you through your life in 50 seconds.
I know. Even when I was 14, I felt like what you just described, like taking it through your, it takes you through your life. One thing I found out today, what the song was about, was that there was this woman who was interested in Robert Plant, and I think us guys know that Robert Plant had a few women interested in him during Led Zeppelin,
I
one
think
or
he
two.
still does.
I think so too. And he said that the woman gave him a choice. She said either it's me or the music. And he basically said he couldn't make that choice. Not that he, broke up with her, but she obviously left, and that's that really informs my understanding of the song a little bit more. I also, just as I'm looking at the lyrics that I pulled up, I thought his first line was "things as they were, then again it will be," but it wasn't. It goes, "Then as it was, then again it will
And it
be."
will be.
So that's really interesting too. And the next line, "and though the course may change sometimes, rivers always reach the sea." Just when he was singing that, he just sang so effortlessly these lyrics. Like it wasn't spontaneous, but it felt the spontaneity really hit hard for me there.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I just this concept that I'm maybe Amy can help here or Lloyd or Eric, because once again, not being trained in music, and I'm around three people that are. It's interesting. I sometimes find like there's a bridge, that you're sometimes short. They're usually not like a minute, right? Like this one, if it is a bridge. And there's also certain songs where there's like a song within a song within a song, and I'm probably diverging a little bit, but
No,
I,
no, no.
I I mean I almost think about like, and if let's stay on the Zeppelin thing, okay, and I think about "Fool in the Rain," okay, and in "Fool in the Rain," there's a song in "Fool in the Rain." It's like they're playing "Fool in the Rain," and then they go to Mardi Gras, and they're down in New Orleans doing Mardi Gras for about a
Right.
minute. Do you know what I'm talking about? That
Yeah.
section, and it's like
Absolutely.
it's like a minute long, and it's like da 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 da, and it's like you feel like you're in Mardi Gras. You're like, yeah, you're like got beads and everything, and then they come out of that, and like John Bonham just has that just melting, fill on the drums, and then Jimmy comes in with just like a ripping, like he's just tearing people's faces off with that solo. So, but that's a song within a song, and that's the same thing that I see here, and I think Paul McCartney played around with that, and so his songs like if you think about
Band on
oh
the
I don't
Run.
know, Band on the Run. Band on the Run's like three songs within a song.
Right.
Um, and on his new album, even Egypt Station, he's got like a song at the end. It's the last song. It's like three songs within a song. So and like someone that's not trained in music, we listen to this stuff, and here's what we think. We hear it and we go, "Why didn't they just take that song and they only made it for a minute? Couldn't they do that for five?" Because we really like those little songs, but they are so short.
What's interesting about this that we none of us have touched on is that there's about a minute and a half of instrumental music. Now, that was just of a time that will never happen again. You can't do that today and expect anyone. I mean, you could put stuff on Spotify, but to expect to get any traction, the hardest rock band could never get away with that of playing in
Yeah,
90 seconds of
yeah.
music. But
Mm.
it doesn't feel like 90 seconds because of the way it's orchestrated.
Not only that, but it's crucial to this song. You
In
know
what
what I
way?
mean?
In
This
what
song
way?
wouldn't be this song without it.
Right.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think that speaks to, I don't know, that could get into just the way that we're programmed now in this swipe if you don't like it this way or that way and go to the next thing. I mean, kids these days, they can't focus. I have a hard time focusing. We all do because we're just programmed into this swiping. It also, and we're talking about music, but the same thing applies to art. I mean, because most of the art that we consume now is on Instagram or something like that, and we're just flipping our phone. Art for me, I grew up surfing and boogie boarding, okay, and I'd get my boogie boarding magazine once every 60 days, and it was only 30 pages, okay, and it had photos of these guys riding their boogie boards in Hawaii. And I know I'm
No,
changing topics for a
no,
second, but the point is, I
wait.
would focus on that. I would
There, wa-
focus on.
there
Yeah.
wasn't any women in the surf
No,
magazine press.
there might have been some of the ads, but the point is, you're able to. I would look at. There was one particular photo of a boogie boarder who's very famous named Mike Stewart in Hawaii, and he's doing a bottom turn on a wave, and it was a center spread. And I must have spent. I don't know if I feel bad about this, but I probably spent in my childhood 2 hours looking at that one photo and studying every single thing about it, and it was one photo. Now my kids, when they're looking at bodyboarding media or surfing media, within like 30 seconds they've seen 60 images. So I wonder, sure, they've seen some good images, but I wonder if they've really focused. Now I bring that back to Led Zeppelin and music. Like you say, you can't have a minute and a half of a killer section with like a song within a song because people won't listen to it. That says a lot about where we're at in consuming art, and I consider music art, right? And we're just swiping through it.
But the irony, Brad, how old are your kids?
So I've got from 23 to 14.
Got it. What's interesting
15.
is all the dads I know that are my age or your age who have
Yeah,
kids and they're teenage, that once they turn them on to Led Zeppelin, they love it. And that's the sad thing, is that there is a market for that type of music where
yeah,
you could wait a minute and a half, but no one trusts their instincts. And going back to what you said about the Surf magazine, um, when we, me being a musician, I never surfed, although I love surf clothing because it's really chill and laid out and laid
yeah,
back.
yeah,
Is that we stared at an album cover for a half hour,
yeah.
maybe with some cannabis, or something, but we
Look
would
at the
look.
lyrics and all that
Right,
stuff.
and
Yeah, yeah,
especially Physical Graffiti, it had like it was a two album set where, it was a picture of an apartment building down on Second Avenue, New York City, and it was a fold out. It was really a cool thing, but back to what you said about your kids, going through a lot of images. I always say today's Tom Petty or today's Jimmy Page is going through a lot of images. Will probably end up working on a video game or coding the next WhatsApp or something like that,
yeah,
or Snapchat, as opposed to like, oh, this girl broke up with me. Oh, or the surf thing. Like, if you were a songwriter, you could have written a song about you just staring at that magazine.
yeah,
Maybe you still could. You never know. So, but
yeah, yeah.
it's a we're programmed not to think very slow lately, and it's sad. But you know, time
But
moves on.
reading the lyrics on, for me, it was mostly cassettes and then CDs. But just if, I mean, sometimes the bands didn't do it. They didn't put their lyrics on there. And I was so mad when I would
Uh,
get that CD in the
Sure.
mail because I wanted that, sometimes you couldn't understand a line and you wanted to
yeah.
know what it was like. But yeah, just hours and hours dissecting lyrics, thinking about what each line meant. And
Mhm.
that was like, yeah, that was everything because you didn't have a lot at your disposal. A brand new CD would come to your house, and that was a couple of months. Like, but it makes me wonder, and it makes me wonder what
Yeah.
Brad thinks about this lyric because I think you've got some thoughts about it.
Oh, the in 10 years gone, the lyric. Yeah. I mean, sure. I mean, I think you know, there's the thing about rivers always reach the sea that Lloyd alluded to. I mean, that has a lot of imagery in it, where you just think about your life and are you in, where are you headed in your life? I think there's the thing where if you do have like, whether it's your own kids or kids that you've cared about, or you're an aunt or an uncle or whatever, right? A sister or brother, and it talks about uh, eagles leaving the nest and things like that, right? I mean, there's just a lot of imagery where you're just like, wow. And once again, it goes back to the pensive nature of life, and this is one of those songs that for me, like when I listen to it, like I say, it just becomes like a panorama of where I've been. I just get all these back to images flooding through my brain, and we all have a different life that we live. But it's almost like how they talk about some people say when they had a near death experience, right? And this is maybe an odd illusion, but they say, hey, I was like, I was whatever, scuba diving or whatever. I felt like I was going to die, or I had this happen. And or these out of body experiences, they almost have like this like little video play of their life, or like a mini, like, and it just goes through and like quickly, and you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like certain songs, I think can elicit a similar thing. And this one, for me at least, does that. It just helps me like see this little replay, and it's actually quite I mean, it's spiritual and it's also cathartic, to do that. Not all the time, but sometimes it's important. I think if some of your favorite songs is to turn the lights off, run it, listen to it, really get into it, and it's just like kind of it helps you like kind of just position yourself in your life and think about where you've been, maybe some things you want to change in your life, treat people a little better, things like that. I don't know. Yeah,
I
I love,
think I think it centers me and makes me think, about the last 10 years whenever I hear it. Eric, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say, Brad, that I love the way you expressed that because I think that you verbalized in a way better than I've ever heard anybody verbalize um, that certain kind of profound experience that you can have with not just this song or Led Zeppelin,
right.
but music. And of course, it's very kind of self-evident and cliche to say, well, music is very transformative and gives you, but the specific thing you're talking about, that certain things you can just lay in the dark, listen to them, and you actually do have this kind of reflective journey that gives you a new perspective on your own life and your own
Yes.
existence. The words that you used were so perfectly expressed how I've experienced that, and I'm sure a lot of people have. So thank you for
You're welcome. Thanks, Eric.
And Brad isn't even a therapist, or maybe he is.
Maybe we need to start some. Maybe I need to start some music therapy for people. I can't. I've always been so. Amy and I've been friends for a long, long time, and I love Amy so much, and just different aspects of her life and her obviously her musical talent is something I've always just. It's just amazing, and yet she can still connect with someone like me who's trained in like accounting and business, but I just love music, and so we have these awesome conversations. She never belittles me or makes me feel less than. It's more just like I know she has amazing talent like in music, but she also is able to just connect with people that just love music, even though we may not have like the talents to pull it off. She's just like, she loves those conversations, and I've always thought that was really cool about Amy.
Well, Amy and I have never jammed, but Amy's just knowledge and the way she plays is you have to see her live if you are in LA when she plays. But I've never jammed with Amy, but I know like I'm more of a blues and rock person. But I know if I said, Amy, let's just do a 1-4-5, I bet she would rip it. She would have a lot of fun doing it, and maybe we will one day. You never know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so nice of both of you. Thank you. But yeah, for music, I mean, probably for any topic really. Like, I mean, Brad's a great surfer, and I'm a very beginning intermediate surfer. But same, he never belittles me about that because I love it so much.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the thing with music. Like, for me, I can get just super excited because somebody else is excited,
Hmm.
right? Like
Yeah.
their stoke comes out, and all of a sudden I can see things in a brand new way. Like like sometimes Brad and I will be talking about a song that we both know, but he'll be like, "Oh my gosh, do you know the bass line?" And then he says he's not trained, but he'll sing the bass line and pretend to play it. And I'll be like, "No, I never even thought about the bass line."
That's
Like,
just Yeah, yeah. That's just back to this is a Zeppelin discussion. We could have a whole other one on the Chili Peppers, but yeah,
Okay, and you'll do it under the bridge.
nice.
Um, um, One thing I had to come to peace with, both my parents. This is like therapy for me too.
Yeah.
Is that my parents were both artists, and my dad was a sculptor, and my parents always dragged us to art exhibits, and my dad and I never appreciated it until I started doing photography as an adult. We did it, and I never made any type of artistic reference with music, but I have to do it with now. I'm okay. I made my peace with it, and I embrace art. And there's this one chord in the song, and he does it a couple of times when he goes, "Do you ever need someone and really need them bad?" And he goes like this. It's like a backwards arpeggio, and I'll see if I could do it. And to me that just feels like an
mm,
expressionist painting, like a Matisse or a Manet or a Monet, and it's just such a beautiful chord the way he does it. He could have gone right, but when he does, like he just knew to do it like that, and it just evokes. I always tell everyone chords evoke emotion, and this really just evokes a really strong feeling in me.
that's a like D6-9.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, that's a nice chord. I always envy the guitar players too because if they strum up, their shoulder comes up, and so you notice it. It feels like that's like a emphasis they have in their body they can pull off.
True. Um, let's talk about the drums, the music. We talk about Robert Plant's lyrics and Jimmy Page's guitar playing, but they were such a unit, just like the Beatles. Even more, there was a gestalt amongst them, just like when Eric and I were talking about the Beatles on our first podcast. Led Zeppelin and the Beatles. One thing both of them have in common is the whole was greater than the sum of its parts. You just had something that the Beatles didn't have is you had amazing musicianship. The Beatles were a great unit, and Ringo and individually they were good. And Paul, even though Paul was an amazing bass player, here there was no weak point. Everyone was just an amazing musician. John Bonham, the drummer, was self-taught. He would just start banging on pots and pans. Jimmy Page met John Paul Jones, the bass player and keyboardist, and really he was the de facto arranger in the group as well, even though Robert Plant might not admit it. And the everyone just really brings their A game in this song, where they're just John Paul Jones's simple bass line, over the second time Jimmy Page plays the riff, and also John Bonham could have played this so heavy, and he was so. It's a mark of a good musician knowing when not to play. It's the kind of blue theory. You don't have. I tell everyone, no one says you have to. Just because the notes are there, that doesn't mean you have to play them. But people feel the need to fill up space, whether they're talking or when they're playing music, and this is a testament to all of them. They just knew what they just. I'm sure that they were guys, and they probably never talked about the emotion of the song, but they knew what to do when they heard the song.
The fewer notes there are, the more import and value each note has. And the more space and silence there is between the notes, the more powerful the notes can be. Often, that's not a hard rule, but I think you make a really good point. And I think when you listen to John Bonham's drums, not only did he know just how hard to go and not to go too hard, but it's deceptively simple, where so many rock drummers made themselves, displayed their talent through complex drum fills and playing very fast and stuff. John Bonham had a real gift for being able to play something very simple and very sparse, and yet the way he played it and the odd little fill that he did put in, although it might be just a one-hit fill instead of some big combination of rolls, it was always in just the right place in in the beat, and hit just right that it kind of matches what I just said. It had so much value. Everything he hit had so much value to it.
To take a page from the Flintstones, Eric, John Bonham was not Bam Bam. Bam Bam and the Flintstones always would go Bam Bam, and he would just hit it so hard. And it was cute on the show, but you don't want that in your band. And I even think when I used to have rock bands, I even put it in the ad. Drummer, looking for a drummer who's very tasty. No Bam Bams, please.
That's good.
Or Animal from the Muppets.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Eat drums.
Well, when you think about rest in peace, but I'm thinking about Charlie Watts with the Rolling Stones that passed away recently, right? And as I was reading some of the tributes that came out about Charlie, they said, this guy just, he wasn't flamboyant. He didn't hit the skins really hard. And when you think about, your favorite Stone song, you'll get that. But he was just in a groove and just knew where to be. And by the way, these were some amazing drummers coming out and saying this, the Dave Grohl's and stuff, saying this guy was just he is the guy. He's like, I wish I could have that style and that grace. The word came a lot, grace. And you don't often hear graceful with rock band drummer, but with Charlie, that's what they said. They probably wouldn't say that, about John Bonham, because the guy did beat it pretty hard sometimes too. But in this particular song, to your point, Eric, I think he was able to really gauge that this is a pensive song. This is a song that elicits a lot of emotion, and so he just dove right in. But give me a break. I mean, John Bonham could find the groove too. But it was just interesting to say that about Charlie, because no one said he hit him hard, but he just knew what to play and what not to play. To your point, Eric, like you said.
Yeah.
So, does anyone have anything else to add before we go on to our questions?
Do we want to talk about the bass playing?
Sure, please.
I mean, there's some slash chords, right? Like even that opening riff that goes from A to D minor 9, like there's still an A in the bass. There's so much power in that. There's just lots of choices I think that he made along the way that I don't know, maybe other people wouldn't have made. They might have gone to the root, but I always appreciate those slash chords, and that's all in the bass player's hands.
Yeah, me
And
too. And I was going to say that that opening riff that Lloyd played earlier, the guitar stays on the A for that opening chord. But then when the bass comes in, sometimes even though the guitar is still playing the A in the bass is going down to an F, which is
That's
the
right.
third,
Yeah.
which is even more interesting, because the guitar, like Jimmy Page has made the choice to play the A underneath that D minor extension chord. So he's kind of playing the fifth,
Yeah.
and then
Thank you.
to
That's
have the
right. It was the
guitar
F.
do the fifth, but the bass go down to the third is fascinating. And I think that's one of the things. I think the riff by itself and that chord, what we talked about earlier, the fact that you go to that minor four chord right at the beginning of the song, and the tone of the guitar and the gentleness already draws you in. And then when the bass comes in and goes down to that F, which is the last thing in the world you'd expect, but it draws you in even further because it works so well, but it's so surprising.
so, Amy, I got a question with regard to what Eric just said. On the sheet music says F major 13 slash A. Is it sort of with the bass guitar playing the F over the this sort of D minor that it makes it an F major 7 or F major 13? Is that what both of you were getting at, or?
If it didn't if it didn't have the D in it, I would say yes, but there's a strong D in that chord. So
Yeah.
definitely a D minor with an F in the bass. Yeah, but the guitar with the A and the bass, like it is a really cool texture. That I mean,
Sounds like
my
your
cat,
dog. Oh, your
my
cat.
cat's making some noise. Yeah.
That's all right.
Uh,
So
but that
good.
also might do a little something, to make it all contemplative at the beginning, not just going one to minor four, but having both of those other notes figure prominently. That might do more than we thought.
Yeah, I think so. And I agree with you, Amy, on the analysis of the chords. The notes, whether you call it a D minor, whatever it is, or an F major, whatever, Lloyd, and I don't remember all the extensions that we listed, but you could make an argument on a very kind of technical basis that it could be either one, but as Amy pointed out, the way that it's voiced and the way that it's played, it really emphasizes the D minor chord. And so if I were the one preparing that chart, that sheet music, I wouldn't have spelled it as an F major, nine or whatever it was. I would definitely call it a D minor, whatever, with an F in the bass. And I think it would be hard to argue the other way, actually, because the
Yeah,
D is so prominent.
yeah, except I remember now that Lloyd said F major 13, so that is a D. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
see the case for that too. But I
yeah,
think
but
just yeah, it depends on your visceral
yeah,
experience where you feel it moving to in your soul.
yeah, I think so. Like whether or not the D note is in there, like I said, the way it's voiced, it feels like a D minor chord to me, the way they voiced it, and that's what stands out to me.
Um, I want to give our non-theory, non-musicians their ears a break from all our talking about it, even though I really enjoyed it. This is my favorite part of the song, and we don't have to. There's no need to analyze it. It's just that once I learned how to play it, I just love playing this part. It goes right before the main heavy riff. That was I just love that passage. Right before it went into the riff.
Yeah, D sharp diminished, right? Is
Yeah, E
that
flat diminished 7. Yeah, E
yeah,
sharp.
except I think the bass plays the F sharp on it. Um, so that chord name would be debatable also. But then I really love those two major seven
I know
chords.
Yes.
that's what gets me. Those two major. I'll just play it again for our
Yeah, play those
listeners.
two chords.
Yeah. No, no. So, and then when he goes, sorry. Well, everyone knows what it. Something like that, and it leads into like that the way those two chords, the D major 7 and the C major 7, lead into the riff. It just seems so seamless and flawless, and music. It's just so musical.
It and also right, it's that riff that comes back again and again, and we hear
Yes,
maybe up to six guitars playing
right.
harmony and counter melody. That I mean, I heard Jimmy Page say that they could never recreate it the way it was on the album live, like ever. And the closest he ever got, he said, was a concert with the Black Crowes, where I don't know, they must have had an extra guitar or something. He said they got
Sure.
closer.
So I read Amy that today that there was like 16 overdubs, and there was different parts that were laid on top of each other, that heavy riff, and then the other two riffs like were separate, and then they were overdubbed on top of each other later in the song. So it's just a masterpiece of guitar orchestration. That's how I would say it. So I'm going to go first this time. Who I would like to hear covered. I pulled an Eric and really went left field. I like Eric's choices. You know, they always come out of the blue, and this is just such a thoughtful, wonderful, emotional song. And I've always, I'm a huge David Bowie fan, and I love great vocalists, male and female. And I just went the other way. And what I thought about who I'd like to hear cover this, I just like to do it a totally different, sort of funky New Orleans way. So I'd like Dr. John to sing it with his piano, with the meters backing him up.
Ooh,
I'm letting
that
that
is
sink
left
in, Lloyd.
field. Would he put some like a different feel to it, maybe?
Totally, totally, just more of a groove, like a meters feel. Just yeah. And he might even change the chords a little bit, making some minor to major. And Dr. John sings with such emotion. I remember he did As Time Goes By with no, no, what was the one he on Sleepless in Seattle? He did a duet with Ricky Lee Jones,
Mm.
Making Whoopi. He did a duet of that, and he just put so much emotion into it with his voice. It just that's and I'm looking for, as a producer, I'm looking for the emotion that a singer could bring, and with Dr. John, you don't have to worry about that. Brad, any ideas, any suggestions for your cover?
Yeah, so Amy had mentioned the Black Crowes cover. Interestingly, I've been listening to the Black Crowes Jimmy Page concert. I've had that on my Spotify for years and years. That's actually a cool cover. But that's
I actually saw that concert. That was a great
oh
show.
oh my goodness. I'm very jealous. That's super awesome. But so there's that. But here's my take on covering it. I would say Chris Cornell on vocals for sure,
Oh,
and
you
I
got
just go
me. You
and I
got
just go
me.
Love
and
it.
and Soundgarden, sure, like the
Yeah.
old Soundgarden. Let's just see what they can do with it.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah. That's there's you don't have to say anything after that, Brad, because I totally. Plus, he's covered "Thank You." He's covered a couple of Led
yeah,
Zeppelin songs, and he did the Prince, "Nothing Compares to You," Sinead
yeah,
O'Connor. I mean, he
beautiful,
just another
beautiful,
tragedy of a really big loss of a wonderful,
yeah,
wonderful talent, and stuff.
yeah,
But thank you for that. Now I can imagine that. But unfortunately, or fortunately, with AI, they just did the Beatles doing "God
Shit.
Only Knows," and it sounds okay. It's not great, but it's just like, who knows maybe some bot is going to pick up your suggestion, and then we're going to listen to it in a couple of days. So you never know.
It's a brave new world. It's a little scary. Yeah.
Um, yeah. Do you know what did everyone here read Brave New World when they were in high school?
No.
I
Brad,
did
did
not.
you?
No, no.
Okay, so it was a book in the 40s that Aldous Huxley, the author, predicted the future, and he talked about this thing called Soma, SOMA, that would sort of anesthetize everyone. What Soma is now is our screens. We're just addicted to our screens.
So we were
That
talking
was
about, yeah,
so he
Yeah.
yeah,
predicted it, and
yeah,
he couldn't have predicted iPads, but
yeah,
that's what it is and stuff.
yeah.
Amy, any suggestions or for your
Okay, you guys have both picked people that can go hard in different ways, right? Dr. John, um, and Chris Cornell. But I would like to pick a female who can go hard,
please, absolutely.
named Ann Wilson with the band Heart.
Oh,
I was going to
Boy,
suggest that, Amy, but I knew that
yeah,
I used that
yeah,
before, so I'm glad you did. That
Oh, you
was
were. I can't
amazing.
believe you were thinking
Yeah.
of that.
Oh, she was the first
yeah.
one that came to mind, so I'm glad you mentioned that you suggested that because she could really knock it out of the park. Would you invite
Yeah.
Nancy back, or would you just want Anne?
Oh yeah, Nancy too, for
Okay.
sure. But they might have to change keys is the only thing in order for her to really wail. And then I don't know if the chords would come across in the same way. But anyway, that was what came to mind for me.
Yeah. Would you? Could we invite Roger Fisher back because that would be really good for me.
Yes, that's a great idea.
Okay. Okay. Good. 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 We covered. What did we cover? What was the hard song? Magic Man. We covered before. So we talked about how much we missed Roger Fisher in that classic combo, classic
Nice.
quintet. Yeah. Eric.
I don't know if we have time for mine.
Oh boy. Uh
It's a
oh.
big list.
Oh
I've
boy.
created another one of my
Could you
custom.
condense it?
Yeah. Okay. So here's what I want. I want the arrangement to be by Daniel Rawson from the band Grizzly Bear. You're familiar with Grizzly Bear?
Yeah, a little bit.
They do some really interesting things with acoustic and electric guitars and wind instruments and things. But it's basically like alternative kind of pop music. But I think they could make such an interesting arrangement out of this because I always think of them as being one of those bands who has these unusual kind of chord progressions that are unpredictable but work really well. They're another band who I could see using the two major seventh chords together, the D major seventh to the C major seventh. Not a lot of bands could get away with that. I think he could make a really cool arrangement of it, but his arrangement would probably be a little more acousticy sounding, and so I would want Dan Auerbach from the Black Keys to produce it because
Yeah.
he would give it that edginess.
Yeah.
And now for guitars, since we need six guitars, I have three guitarists in mind who all could play a good rhythm guitar, but also do a really nice job with fills and leads.
Hmm.
One is Jack White,
Good
one is
one.
Bob Mould, who
From
people would
Husker
know more
Du.
from like the late 80s. Yeah, Husker Du,
Yeah.
Bob Mould from Husker Du, and then a woman who's got a few solo albums out named Anna Calvi. She's a younger woman, and I forget where she's from, but she can sing and play guitar in a really, really intense, emotive way that I think would fit in well. So that's my instrumental orchestra and producer. And then for vocals, I want Bowie because I think
Yeah.
Bowie has that vocal charisma. He has the range in pitch, but he also has the range in emotion and timbre and
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
where he could do the more gentle stuff in the earlier part of the song. He could rip out the big, powerful vocals later in the song, and every note of it would be gripping, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Might I take over Eric and Amy's production and put David and Ann Wilson together,
That'd be cool.
Um,
and with Chris too? Maybe trading some verses. I think the three of those guys.
I'll tell you what, here's what I'll agree to.
Okay.
Okay, my studio version is just David, but the live version, I think we get all of them.
Okay. Good.
Is
All
that
up on
Deal.
fair?
stage. Love
Because
it.
I love the Chris Cornell suggestion
Yeah.
too.
Yeah,
That's brilliant.
yeah. And the funny thing is, Amy and Eric, the first two people came to mind was Bowie and Ann Wilson, but we've covered them in podcasts, and I've used him for other covers, so that's
Yeah,
why I didn't mention. But I think those are all of you guys great choices, so
thank you.
thank you. In terms of the question, I would ask the producer again. Half the time, and this time included, I would just like to be a fly on the wall. I would love to have been there, like with Jimmy Page, not knowing I was there, maybe hidden camera, watching him come up with all these riffs and watching him string them together and watching his thought process and his editorial choices on how he did this. And just watching would be enough for me.
Um, Lloyd, would you do me a favor and play that riff that we actually didn't talk about the da-bo-do-do-do,
Oh
baby,
yeah,
got to tune back down to,
and
yeah, the song
it's
is
my
also in
yeah,
drop D.
it's a drop G, so it's like oh no, that's the second verse. That one.
Yeah, so it's you said there's a first and second version. What I heard is bass player uh da 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 and guitar da 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 ba da da. So I hear a conflict between the
The,
two of them. You hear both notes.
okay, on my
Uh,
note, I'm on 1 second on the. Excuse me, I may just want to add something on the sheet music. It says there's also an electric sitar. So there's. I'm wondering if that gives it a chorus effect and makes the notes a little bit off. But, um, it just yeah. Go. I just had to talk about that, but please go on.
yeah, that seems like a mistake to me, but I wonder if that, and you don't hear it every time. And sometimes Jimmy Page plays it by himself, and
Yeah,
so I want to know if that was intentional because you get that rub just on one note, and I want to know if they meant to do it.
yeah.
That is a
That's a
good
great question.
question.
It's an excellent question. Brad, did you go yet? Or
No, okay. Yeah, I would, back to this would be quick. I would just go back to that section, right? That one where it's like a bridge, or we're trying to figure out what it is, and then just say, "Hey, could you have made that longer?" And that's it. Could you just have gone on instead of for a minute and a half, or two and a half, or three? It was just so beautiful. That's
Eric, you went already, right? Or did?
No, I haven't
Oh,
gone.
please,
You know,
please.
pretty much everything I would ask them, I think we've already addressed in our conversation. It would be just about what you said, how they came up with the guitar riffs, but also the guitar sounds and the chord progressions and everything. I would have loved to have been there to witness the entire, um, the continuous process from beginning to end. But since we've already talked about all that, I'd like to take my turn as an opportunity to ask Brad a question, which is, even though we know which section of the song is your favorite, I'm curious what aspect of the song is your favorite. What is the thing about the song that you like the most?
yeah. I mean, I guess it's just tied into my life. I mean, there was probably what cemented it, and the reason I'd say it's my favorite song is I've always liked it, and my daughter was a senior in high school, and we had some run-ins. Had never raised a teenage daughter, and I guess if I could do it again, I would hopefully do better. And but anyway, we took a trip to Arizona to visit my parents. They were in Arizona at the time, and so we were in a car. Okay, and we were driving, listening to a lot of music, and she was playing some music she liked, and I was listening, got to know some Bruno Mars or whatever. Anyway, and I played this song, and I remember she just liked it so much, and I was able to like focus on that bridge part, even though I'm not a musician. She was just like, "Oh, that's beautiful." And I just recall being with her in the car and listening to it, and she was like a senior, just about to graduate, so she was like Robert says, as the eagle leaves the nest, it's got so far to go.
Hmm.
And so it's just
How,
that moment and everything, that's probably why.
Brad, how old is your daughter
Yeah.
now?
She's 23 now, and she just graduated from college, of their marketing
Okay.
degree.
So
Yeah.
I know kids love their privacy. So,
Yeah.
but if you had to guess what was on her Spotify playlist, do you think there would be any Led Zeppelin that she listens
Yeah.
to regularly?
Oh, right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really kind of got her going. She liked classic rock because she's grown up with me, but she hadn't really got into Zeppelin too much. And now we love talking Zeppelin. I think she's way into it. I think that trip had a lot to do with it,
I love
and
that
going through
father.
that song.
What a
Yeah,
way to father and daughter bond. Very cool.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's
yeah,
something that you'll always be able to do.
yeah,
Very nice.
Last time I talked to my niece Audrey, she was talking about Greta Van Fleet.
yeah,
Ah,
yeah.
there you
She
Yeah,
go.
I personally
yeah,
have a problem with them because it's just because someone has a high voice, that doesn't mean they're Led Zeppelin. Even though Robert Plant loves them, when Robert
yeah,
Plant, when they did Kashmir, it was because they went to India and absorbed different influences. They just had a tremendous amount of influences, whether it was playing on sessions. These guys just said, okay, let's see, let's just do Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's the only.
I'm conflicted about them because
Yeah.
for that reason.
Yeah, there is some visceralness that I like in their vibe and everything, but why have you know um, new Coke when you could have the classic Coke? So not
That is
cocaine, not cocaine, just Coke. We're just talking about.
Coca-Cola. Yeah.
All right. So anyone have anything more to add or? Are we all?
Thank you for this. I felt like I think it was only 4 days ago you suggested it, and
Oh,
I've probably listened to it 10 times or so in
oh.
the last 4 days. So it's been really fun for me
Well
actually.
then,
I really love it.
well then, Amy, then I have to make you a Led Zeppelin playlist. Then and now it's a lot easier. I don't have to make it on a cassette or anything. I could just
Yeah.
hit a few buttons and send you some music. So
Okay,
very
let's
easy.
not go overboard. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, so until just want to call people's attention again to our Why We Love It playlist on Spotify. We always have every song we talk about on that list, and we also have the one that we're doing in the future, Alice in Chains. So until next time, I'm Lloyd Moss,
And I'm Eric Hennigan.
I'm Amy Nolte.
And I'm Brad Nolte.
and this has been another episode of Why We Love It. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks everybody for watching. I'll see you next time on Amy Nolte Music.